Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Believe in Bengal podcast. Yours truly, Solomon Wilcots, right here on Valley Sports, Ohio. Coming up a little bit later in the show, we're going to be joined by Hall of Famer and former Cincinnati Bengals offensive tackle Anthony Munoz joins us on the show to talk about what's taking place with the Bengals offensive line and some of the improvements we have seen take place there. But first, I want to start today's show just kind of talking to you a little bit today, because I am telling that the Cincinnati Bengals, while they're sitting there with the franchise tag on T. Higgins, much has been speculated as to whether or not they'll trading T. Higgins. Remember, 2 weeks after the team tagged him with the franchise tag, did ask to be traded. He has yet to sign the franchise tag. I am of the mindset that the Cincinnati Bengals should trade wide receiver T. Higgins. Not because there's something wrong with T. Higgins. He's a phenomenal player. In fact, I think he makes this team better in 2024 if he was on the field. But right now, it looks like the best that we have going with T. Higgins is the assets that he has as a trade value. And that means the Cincinnati Bengals could get as high as a second-round pick. They could do a player swap, one starting player at a position of need that the Bengals need on the offensive line and the secondary, that they could trade, of course, to another team and get another player in return. Let's not forget, it was at the start of the 2021 season that the Cincinnati Bengals did trade former first-round pick and center Billy Price. And what did we get in return? B.J. Hill. You can't tell me the Cincinnati Bengals did not win when it comes to that particular trade. And that's what the Bengals are looking for. They're not looking for a break-even deal if they were to deal T. Higgins. They know what he brings to the table. Duke Tobin has even said it. He's not interested in making other teams' rosters good. He's interested in making his own team better by any transaction that he would make. So if he were to trade T. Higgins, he would be looking for a core player to add to the Cincinnati Bengals roster. Okay, someone that would add depth, not just for the short term, but for the long term. And that brings us back to T. Higgins. Right now, if he were to sign and play under the franchise tag, it would be similar to what we saw with Jesse Bates going into the 2022 season. Now, Jesse Bates didn't ask for a trade. He sat there, hoped and waited for the team to sign him to a long-term deal. When that deal didn't come, he signed the franchise tag up, sitting out the entire preseason. He played during the 22 season and then went on to get his bag playing for the Atlanta Falcons, where he's gone on to do great things. And that's really what it's all about. As one coach has said, and I'm going to quote him, and it's Mike Tomlin, we want volunteers, not hostages. You don't want players on your roster that you're holding captive, forcing them to play for you while you're paying them $21 million, knowing that maybe you get your best from them, but maybe you don't. But guess what? When they walk away, you're not going to get any compensation for them. And I think right now, because T. Higgins did ask to be traded, and there's a huge market out there for players of T. Higgins' caliber, that the Cincinnati Bengals should look to get fair compensation for T. Higgins via a trade prior to the draft. If you wait till after the draft is over, you're not getting anything for T. Higgins, because as much as someone would want him, they would have already drafted maybe a wide receiver in the 2024 draft. Remember, if you do a deal with T. Higgins, if he goes to another team, that team already knows they're going to have to pay him a long-term contract. They're going to have to sign him to a long-term deal. And so the Cincinnati Bengals would free up $21 million against their cap, right? That would give them the money to go ahead and sign Jamar Chase, maybe sign another player that they plan on keeping long-term. But they do have really good money under the cap right now to be able to go into this season, to keep T. Higgins, to use their draft picks and move forward into the 2024 season. Again, I'm of the mindset that we want volunteers, not hostages. You don't want to force a player in today's age to play for you when he clearly has expressed that he would prefer to play elsewhere. It was just recently reported when they asked T. Higgins, who are some of the quarterbacks that he would like to play for? Of course, he did the right thing, said the right thing. He would prefer to play with Joe Burrow. But he also added other quarterbacks that he's interested in playing with. One is his former college teammate with the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence. He also mentioned C.J. Stroud. He also mentioned Lamar Jackson. And he also mentioned Josh Allen in Buffalo. So T. Higgins now is starting to imagine what the possibilities are, the possibilities that he could be playing for another team. In his heart of hearts, of course, he's played his first 4 seasons with the Cincinnati Bengals, drafted in the same draft class with Luke Wilson and Joe Burrow in 2020, and has played phenomenally at a high level during the 4 seasons he's been here. Over the 250-plus catches that T. Higgins has had during the 4 seasons he's played with the Cincinnati Bengals, roughly 81% of those catches have resulted in a first down or a touchdown for the Cincinnati Bengals offense. So this guy is a first-rate wide receiver. He's a first-class person, a first-class individual. We would rather have him play for us than play against us. But if you are the Cincinnati Bengals, why would you hold a player hostage who's clearly said he would love to play somewhere else? Why would you pay him $21 million when he would prefer to be somewhere else? And why wouldn't you use him as to get a second-round pick in this upcoming draft and to earn some draft capital? Because I am of the belief that if the Cincinnati Bengals were to get a second-round pick and a player, right, say an offensive lineman, maybe another defensive back for T. Higgins, that they could use that pick to maybe get another wide receiver in this year's draft class. But how about a tight end like Brock Bowers with the 18th overall selection? I will say this. Every great quarterback, particularly in today's modern football, has to have a tight end who can help him control the middle of the field in the passing game. Tom Brady had Rob Gronkowski. Patrick Mahomes has Travis Kelce. Who does Joe Burrow have? Yeah, that's right. We keep going out, getting him a tight end on the free agent market, 1-year deal, right? 1 year for Hayden Hurst, 1 year for C.J. Uzomah, 1 year for Irv Smith Jr., 1 year for Mike Gesicki. When are we going to get that staple, talented, do-it-all tight end? And that's exactly what Brock Bowers is. Not only is he a 3-time All-American at Georgia, the kid started as a freshman. He's an inline blocker. He's not as great as maybe Bronk was, but the kid will stick his face in there. He'll block you. He can change the line of scrimmage and set the edge for the run game for the Cincinnati Bengals. He can control the middle of the field because he's a great route runner and great when it comes to creating yards after the catch. Explosive tight end who can flat out run and pull away from defenders when he catches the ball. He can break tackles and create yards after contact, yards after the catch in the Cincinnati Bengals offense. And if he's controlling the middle of the field, Jamar Chase is doing damage outside the numbers and down the field. To pair up a player like Brock Bowers with Jamar Chase in our passing game, I think would be utterly phenomenal, okay? I think we should go get him anyway, even if T. Higgins stays for the upcoming 2024 season. But if there's a trade here to happen, I think the Bengals should take advantage of it. As much as I'd love to see T. Higgins continuing to wear Bengals stripes, I think the Cincinnati Bengals should understand that you want volunteers, not hostages, and maybe T. Higgins can better serve the Cincinnati Bengals with the draft capital that comes via a trade and maybe a quality player that you could get from trading him as well. All right, stick around. We're going to come back with more. When we do come back, we're going to be joined by the Cincinnati Bengals former offensive tackle and Hall of Famer Anthony Munoz joining us right here on the Believe in Bengal podcast right here on Bally Sports, Ohio. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Believe in Bengal podcast with Solomon Wilcots. Right now, we're joined by former Cincinnati Bengal great offensive tackle and Hall of Famer Anthony Munoz joins us on the show. Anthony, how you doing today, my friend?
Solomon, I'm doing great, man. It's always good to be with you. You do such a fantastic job. Anytime I get a text or something, I said, yeah, I got to be a Solomon. I know we're going to talk some good stuff. So it's good seeing you and good being with you.
Well, you are a great resource. I try to be judicious in how we tap into the knowledge that you bring, because I want to make sure this for the right occasion. And this is it, because look, the Cincinnati Bengals go out and they sign Trent Brown, 6'8", 370 pounds. On the other side, we have Orlando Brown. He's 6'8", 300 plus pounds. First, I want to just kind of get your thoughts on the addition of Trent Brown, and how does he go about making our offensive line better, Anthony?
Well, first of all, I'm glad to see that. I know that we've struggled a little bit. First of all, I feel pretty good about the middle of our line, with Karras and Kappa and, Volson. I feel good there. I think they're pretty solid. Orlando Brown on the left tackle, I feel good about. And, of course, we lost Jonah to the Cardinals. And it's good to see we get another little guy at tackle, But, Trent Brown's got some great experience. He'll be going into his 10th year. He's, he's been a Pro Bowler. He's been a, Super Bowl champion. He's played with some pretty good teams. So we bring some great experience on that right tackle position with Trent. So, and I think that's a key to me. First key, keep Joe Burrow healthy.
Yes.
And how do you do that? With the guys up front. So, it's great to see they address that in free agency. But, I still kind of am a long range type of guy. I think you need to bring some guys and train them and hopefully keep them more than just a 1 year, 2 year deal.
Yeah, we have guys on short-term contracts up front on that offense. We have the size. Yep. Maybe this is a significant piece in terms of totally rebuilding this offensive line. We feel like we've got 5 solid pieces now, but we have that 18th overall selection. Would you like to see them maybe use that to add maybe a young, because it's very rare that we're picking up this high. It's a good year for offensive linemen. Would you like to see them add maybe a young offensive tackle into the rotation?
Well, that's a great point, Solomon. And I think with Trent Brown, we do put together 5 pretty good offensive linemen still, but you're looking at depth that you need. You're looking at, long term. And I think this is, far back as I can remember, this is a great draft with a lot of really, really good offensive tackles, man. I think you can really go about 8 or 9 deep, that most of them might even be in the first round. Maybe not, but a lot of them are considered some of the best. And so maybe that's, I was looking maybe get a tight end, but they, I guess it's Gesicki. Is that how they say it?
Yeah, Mike Gesicki. Yeah.
So they signed him, so they got a tight end, another. But, I wouldn't mind seeing someone that Frank and, and Zach can pick up a young lineman that they can train and can be there more than a 1-2 year deal. So, and there's some good ones, guys that I've seen play, from Oregon State, Washington, Alabama, Georgia, guys that are, been pretty good college football players. And of course, stepping into the NFL, you got to step it up. But I think these are guys that are very talented. So that might be something you look at a number 18 pick.
Yeah. Also, I want to just kind of pick your brain on this, because look, I just, I remember walking into our locker room as a rookie, going all the way back to 1987, man. I grew up in Southern California, and I walk in that locker room. I see you over there. I see Max over there. Man, I had to walk over and introduce myself, right? I just felt very privileged to be on a team with you guys. I had always looked up to you, and I just thought we had the best offensive line in football. And the numbers showed it, because we led the league in rushing back-to-back years. I mean, it's just phenomenal during our run there in the late 80s. And so I wanted to just kind of pick your brain on this, because we ran maybe that zone style offense with Jim McNally. The Bengals still do a lot of that today. How do these big, massive tackles that we have now, how does that mesh with our ability to run the kind of scheme that Zach Taylor wants to run currently?
I think, it plays right into it. I think when you have guys that size, we're talking about the 2 tackles. Those 2 guards aren't small guards.
They are big boys.
They're big. You look at Kappa and Jonah Williams, who was 310, 315, looks small next to Kappa.
That's right.
Now you got a 370 pounder. So you got him and Kappa, and then Volson, another big guy with Orlando Brown and Karras in the middle. I think it's you have 5 guys that should be able to pound the football. And you mentioned the zone blocking scheme. You throw in a power and a couple different other plays, but your bread and butter is that coming off the football. And I don't know all the intricacies of their zone blocking scheme, but I can tell you the original zone blocking scheme allowed you to come off the football. People thought it was a passive, you wait. No, you were on a track, man, and it was you and either a guard, double teaming to the next level. And that gave you a chance to utilize your size and come off. And if it didn't happen that your size took advantage of it, you used the defensive lineman's momentum because they started out and you would use them. But I tell you what, you look at what they have up front. And, for someone that played the O-line and you have Frank Pollock, who I really respect as offensive line coach, I think I'm looking forward and hopefully we see some pounding the football.
Yeah, they can grind it out, and you still have the ability to pin and pull if you want to do that, because I think that's where they can really load up. This is arguably one of the biggest offensive lines in football. So they're going to look pretty good getting off the bus, aren't
they? They really are. You send Orlando and Trent off first, and the defensive linemen are going to have to look up at those two. But, and you make a great point, Solly. We talk about the zone blocking scheme, but you still need some of that gap blocking, man. You need to get those, those angles and come down, and especially with guys the size of what the Bengals are going to have. So it takes a good combination, a good mix of that zone, of the power, of the gap blocking scheme. And you hate to keep saying, well, but that's what was our bread and butter. I mean, we ran that inside zone, then you go outside, and then you run a power, you run a counter, and you gave us a chance to not only come off the football, but now come down, pin the guys, pull a couple guys around. And I think that's what makes offensive line play was so much fun for me, was the whole strategic planning of what you did. And we're just talking run game. I mean, there's a whole nother game plan pass blocking, but that's what makes it fun. And hopefully we see a lot of that diversity with this offensive line.
And this has always been an organization that valued offensive line, mean, tough guys who can play on the offensive line. There's no doubt about it. I remember going into the 2021 draft, that was the Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase. And, I mean, I don't even want to be put in that situation. I know you and I were like, man, we got to fix this offensive line. And no one's going to quibble with the decision to take Jamar Chase. He's been so good for the Cincinnati Bengals, a transcendent player. But right now in our league, I think you have a lot of teams that they want the touchdown maker, but they also want the road grader.
Right.
They're having a hard time. They're going for the touchdown makers over the road graders. And I'm going to go back to that 2021 season with Detroit Lions. Remember, 2 picks later, I think with the 7th overall selection, they took Penei Sewell. Right. He's turned out to be everything that we thought he would. He's mean, he's nasty. He's helped transform the Lions offensive line. And you and I said blocking comes before touchdowns. And you can see that offense and that team is gone. The franchise has gone to the next level. And in that same draft, Anthony, they selected a player, I think 4th or 5th round, Amon-Ra St. Brown. His production at the wide receiver position has been just as good as any wide receiver in that draft class. What I'm trying to say here, you got to take the road graders first, because now we can find wide receivers later in the draft that can still produce at a very high level.
Can I just add something real quick? So you mentioned Penei, Brown. I got to mention, they weren't SEC. They weren't Big Ten.
That's
2
right.
Pac-12 guys. I just wanted to put that in.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So, but no, you know what? And this year we don't have a Jamar Chase in the draft, but you have a lot of, some of these road graders. And you mentioned Penei. I mean, not only is he tough, physical, but the guy can get out there and run for his size.
He can.
So,
yes, he can.
That's beside the point. But yeah, we have a chance to continue to use our touchdown makers, but let's get some guys and build with the guys we already have. I mean, you get some young linemen. I mean, what better guys to learn from than an Orlando Brown and a Trent Brown that have been around, and a Karras, the ultimate leader at offensive center. So, you mentioned when you got here, and that's what I had when I got here as a rookie. We had Jim LeClaire, we had Dave Lapham, we had Reggie Williams, Isaac Curtis, Kenny Anderson. So you go in the locker room and you go, man, these guys know how to do it. Let's watch. And that's what young offensive linemen would have a chance to have if they come to Cincinnati after this next draft, is you have 2 6'8" guys. You have, big guys in the middle. Just sit there and study. And then you got an offensive line coach that teaches some excellent technique. Mm-hmm. So, let's maybe you and I should apply for general manager.
We'll just call Duke and say, hey, Duke, we got to play. And here's what you do. We'll be able
You don't have to pay us anything. This is all pro bono.
We're
just
free. I can tell you this, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Because I love our tight ends. I love what Tanner Hudson was able to give us. I love what Hayden Hurst gave us in the one season that he was here. I think Mike Gesicki's going to be really good in this offense. But you and I both know Tom Brady, he had his Rob Gronkowski. Patrick Mahomes, he has Travis Kelce. And I think we've got to get, if we have the opportunity, that really special player at the tight end position for Joe Burrow. Because what that does, Anthony, it allows us to dominate and win over the middle of the field, because Chase is going to eat them up outside the numbers. If you get a guy who can dominate and win over the middle, who can win down inside the red zone at the tight end position, I think it elevates the Bengals passing game. I think it elevates their offense. And if he's an inline blocker, I think he can impact the run game as well. Brock Bowers, for me, is that one special player at the tight end position that you don't even see in every draft. I don't know if he'll be there at 18 when the Bengals go on the clock, but boy, would I love to have him. I just like to get your thoughts on what a player like that would mean for the Bengals offense, what it means for Joe Burrow in the passing game.
No, I think it's huge. And he's a name I've mentioned before in some interviews. I think it would be huge to get a young, dominant tight end like that. And you talk about, the late 80s, we had the running game. We had Eddie Brown, we had Chris Collinsworth, we had Tim McGee. Don't forget about Rodney Holman.
He was a man.
He wasn't a 260, 270-pound tight end, but he could block at 240 like a lot of linemen.
That's right.
He could get downfield, had great hands. So he occupied that middle of the field, short, intermediate, but deep. So Brock Bowers, to get somebody like that and to add to Chase and all the other weapons we have, that would be humongous for Joe Burrow. And that was the first name that I thought about as I started looking at what the Bengals might need. There's lineman, tackle, lineman, tight end. I think that would be a couple number 18 choices that I'd be looking at.
And I got one for you here now. It would be more economical. Whenever you have a wide receiver who's producing, say, the 90 catches or 1,000 yards receiving, the way it's trending, it's going to cost you anywhere from 20 to 30 million a year. So the franchise tag put on T. Higgins, who does produce at that level, is 21 million. You know what the franchise tag for a tight end with that kind of production this offseason? 12 million. So It's a $10 million separation for the same production. So that I'm just throwing out some numbers here that stands to reason why if we were to go with a tight end that we could keep on the team long term, as opposed to just a 1-year contract here, 1 year there, that even if we were paying him at the top of the market for a tight end, it's still going to be very economical. And then you could pair that tight end with Jamar Chase for the next 10 years in the Bengals offense.
Yeah, that you have a great point there. And, a lot of people are always looking at talent and you got your, what do they call them, capologists now? And
That's right.
And that, to me, when you mentioned that, I was going to say about half of that 21. And I didn't know the exact figure.
That's
right. But 12, that's you're right. That makes sense to try to tie somebody up, and you save some money there, and you get one of your top a position you're in need of, and you get the top echelon of tight end. So that makes a lot of sense, Ollie.
Hey, he's from Napa, but he's not a whiner, if you know what I'm saying. That's a play on word.
That's right.
He's a tough dude, man, and he's a competitor.
Yeah.
I had a chance to meet him and sit down with him at the combine camp. I did. I came back and watched more tape. Think about a player coming from Napa Valley, California. He lands in Athens, Georgia, in the dead heat of summer at the time we start training camp. And Kirby Smart, the head coach at Georgia. He ain't taking it easy on nobody, let alone a freshman. This guy wins the starting job as a true freshman and becomes a 3-time All-American. I think that's phenomenal. I think it says something about his work ethic as well.
It really does. And for someone you've done this, has experienced the same thing. You've experienced that weather.
Yes.
And experienced the weather in Athens, Georgia, man. It's night and day, especially in the summer camp. And it to do that and to have that fortitude and that, I mean, just that go get it. That speaks volumes of a young man that can go there and earn that starting job and do what he's done. But, I've watched him play over the years. Of course, Georgia's been a great team for years.
Yes.
You watch that guy and we're talking about, the touchdown makers and the running backs and the defense, and Georgia has all those.
Yes.
But they've had a stud at tight end, and I think he's going to do some great things. And I wouldn't mind seeing him do great things in NFL with Bengal stripes.
Yeah, I remember last year's draft, everybody was talking about the tight end position. They said, well, wait till you see the guy coming out of Georgia next year. He's better than all of the tight ends in the previous draft in 2023, and I think they were absolutely right. Anthony, it's always great having you on the show. You are the best, my friend. Thank you for stopping by the Believe in Bengal podcast. We look forward to talking to you again sometime soon, okay?
Hey, Solomon, you're the best, man. Anytime. I love being with you. And, just never hesitate to give me a ring, and I'll join you. So you take care and have a great day.
Appreciate it. He is the great Hall of Famer Anthony Munoz stopping by the Believe in Bengal podcast right here on Bally Sports Ohio. We'll be back with more right after this. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of the Believe in Bengal podcast. We want to thank Cincinnati Bengals great Hall of Famer Anthony Munoz for stopping by to join us on the show. Of course, we got to talk a lot about T. Higgins, a lot about this offensive line, and, of course, a lot about tight end Brock Bowers out of the University of Georgia. What if he could be added to the Cincinnati Bengals show? It's just absolutely incredible. In fact, we want you to subscribe to the podcast. We want you to send me, DM me, direct message me at Solomon's Wisdom on my Twitter handle. You have any questions that you want us to talk about here on the Believe in Bengal podcast, I want you to send your questions in because I want to answer them. Anything you want to know about the Cincinnati Bengals, you can ask yours truly, Solomon Wilcots, right here on the Believe in Bengal podcast on Bally Sports Ohio, and I'll provide the answers on next week's show. And, of course, you can go to our YouTube channel as well. You can go and check us out on SI.com. A lot of Believe stories are written there. You can go to SI.com. And, of course, our Believe Network covers every single team around the National Football League. So, again, we want you to subscribe. We want you to direct message me at my Twitter handle, at Solomon's Wisdom, to ask me any question you want to know about the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'll answer it when I come back to our Believe in Bengal podcast on Bally Sports Ohio again next week. That's going to do it for this week's show. Don't forget to join us again next time, everyone.